The trustees did not raise their voices. They did not accuse, threaten, or negotiate. They simply opened the sealed inheritance record and delivered one devastating sentence. Diana's private fortune had been protected for her sons and their direct descendants alone. Camilla's children, grandchildren, and wider family had never been intended to receive a single privilege from it. For several frozen seconds, the Queen said nothing. Then she pushed back her chair, turned toward the door, and stormed out. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Camilla entered Clarence House expecting clarification, not exclusion. The trustees' meeting was a closed legal review in which those appointed to protect Diana's estate explained who could benefit and who could not. That distinction mattered because the fortune included investments, possessions, income, and family-held assets carrying emotional weight beyond money. Her representatives had asked whether benefits might one day extend to Tom Parker Bowles, Laura Lopes, or their children through her marriage to Charles. The Queen kept her face controlled until the lead trustee repeated the ruling. Marriage to the king, he said, created no claim over anything connected to Diana. Camilla removed her reading glasses and stared at the document as if the words had turned against her. Charles shifted beside her, but said nothing. He understood the trap immediately. Defending his wife would look like an attempt to weaken the final protections surrounding the inheritance of his first wife. The trustee then read the sealed restriction, a binding clause, meaning a legal instruction that could not be ignored, barred any spouse, step-parent, advisor, or extended household from redirecting, borrowing against, or influencing the estate. The language was cold because it had been designed to survive emotion, remarriage, and royal pressure. William and Harry were not merely named beneficiaries. Their direct descendants were protected as well, closing every path through which another family branch might gain control. Camilla's composure broke. She placed her glasses on the table, pushed back her chair, and said, "Then there was never any reason for me to be here." Charles looked up, but she had turned away. The door closed before the trustees could explain the remaining provisions, leaving the king seated in silence, while every person in the room avoided his eyes. What Camilla did not hear was worse than exclusion. Diana had left a personal explanation for why her fortune must never be absorbed into another royal household. As the door closes behind Camilla, the trustees turn to Charles and prepare to reveal the names, fears, and family wounds hidden inside Diana's final protection. This was never merely a dispute over money. It was a collision between two families forced to live beneath the same crown, but never protected by the same legacy. Camilla believed years of service had earned her household a place within the monarchy's future. William saw the fortune as the last boundary his mother had been able to draw. Between them sat Charles, a husband, a father, and a king, knowing that any word he chose would wound someone he loved. Camilla had spent years arguing that her children wanted no titles, no thrones, and no borrowed importance. Yet beneath that distance lived a fear she rarely admitted. When Charles was gone, would Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes still be treated as family, or would the palace close around them? Ceremonial recognition mattered because it signaled belonging, and belonging inside the royal household could vanish the moment its protector disappeared. William carried a different burden. Diana's estate was not simply a pool of money. It held letters, jewelry, investments, childhood objects, and handwritten instructions, proving that his mother had anticipated future pressure. To him, protecting those assets meant protecting the boundary she had drawn when she could no longer defend herself. Charles read the trustees' summary alone after the meeting. The document explained, in plain terms, that trustees were independent guardians, legally required to follow Diana's wishes rather than royal preference. He reached the final page, placed it on the desk, and remained silent. Defending Camilla could look like betrayal. Supporting William and Harry could deepen the wound inside his marriage. Behind another closed door, Camilla removed a bracelet Charles had given her and called her sister through a private recorded conversation, later preserved in a household account. Her voice tightened as she asked whether the palace would always see her children as temporary guests. She did not sound furious now. She sounded afraid. William had known a review was coming. Advisors had warned him that Camilla's representatives were seeking future household clarification, a phrase meaning formal guidance about who might receive family benefits later. He told Catherine only part of the truth, because he feared the request would reopen old pain. Then the trustees revealed Harry's written approval. Despite the distance between the brothers, he had agreed that every restriction should be reaffirmed. William stood with Diana's handwritten inventory and paused over George, Charlotte, Louis, Archie, and Lilibet. Every grandchild had been deliberately included. Their unity had begun with one private ceremony and one request that changed everything. To understand why William and Harry acted together, the story must return to the ceremony that transformed an uncomfortable boundary into a permanent line of defense. Months before Camilla stormed from the trustees' room, the family gathered for what should have been a quiet ceremony of remembrance. No cameras were present, no public announcement was planned, yet one request made inside that private gathering changed the course of Diana's inheritance forever. William heard it first. Harry received the account hours later. By nightfall, both brothers had reached the same conclusion. Unless the estate was legally reinforced, their mother's legacy could slowly be absorbed by another family. The decisive moment came at Althorp, Diana's family estate, during a private anniversary ceremony devoted to the future care of her memorial objects. Only a small group attended. Charles had asked Camilla to remain for the final discussion because he believed her presence might prove that old divisions had softened. To him, inclusion offered healing. To William, it risked blurring a boundary that had survived years of pressure. Camilla waited until the formal remarks ended before speaking to the prince alone. She asked whether one of Diana's lesser-known investment funds might someday support educational opportunities for all of Charles's grandchildren, including the children born through Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes. The request sounded measured, almost practical, but William heard something else. He heard the first attempt to redefine private inheritance as shared family provision. William went completely still. He closed the memorial ledger, a written record listing the ownership and intended care of Diana's personal objects, and told her that his mother's estate was not a general royal fund and would never become one. Camilla insisted she was asking about fairness, not entitlement. Charles stepped in, hoping to calm them, but his defense only deepened his son's alarm. If the king already saw the question as reasonable, then the protection was weaker than William had believed. That evening, William called Harry without aides present and repeated Camilla's exact words in a recorded family account, later preserved by the trustees. Silence followed. Then Harry asked one question. Could every protection be strengthened immediately? The brothers, divided in so many other ways, issued a joint confidential instruction. Every clause, beneficiary, discretionary power, and possible route to an outside household had to be reviewed. Before leaving Althorp, William placed his hand on the closed ledger and told Charles, "This must never be discussed as shared family property again." The king understood the warning, but Camilla would soon discover what it had set in motion. What began as a cautious question had now become a legal barricade carrying brothers' signatures and distrust. When Camilla discovers that one private question triggered a complete legal review, restraint disappears, and the conflict moves from sealed correspondence into the same room. Camilla did not wait for another formal meeting. Hours after leaving the trustees, she demanded to see William alone. She believed he had transformed a reasonable question into a public judgment on her children. He believed she had crossed a boundary that should never have required explanation. When they finally faced each other inside a private palace library, there were no advisors, no lawyers, and no carefully prepared statements. Only two people defending families, whose histories could never be reconciled. Camilla sent the message directly, asking William to come to Clarence House before the trustee confirmation spread through the wider royal household. Clarence House was the King and Queen's London residence, but that afternoon, it felt less like a home than a place where private loyalty would be tested. William arrived without Catherine. He refused the offered tea, remained standing, and made clear that he had not come to soften the ruling. Camilla spoke first. "You have turned my children into intruders inside a family they have spent decades respecting. She insisted that she had never demanded Diana's jewelry, letters, or personal treasures. Tom and Laura had never asked for royal titles. Yet, in her eyes, the review had transformed a question about future security into a declaration that her bloodline would always remain outside the door. William did not retreat. He told her the danger was not what she intended to take today. The danger was the precedent created tomorrow. A precedent was an earlier decision that could later be used to justify another claim, and he would not allow his mother's wishes to be weakened by gradual exceptions. One allowance could become another. Sympathy could become influence. Influence could become control. Camilla stepped closer and placed both hands on the back of a chair. Her anger broke into something more exposed. She asked whether he would ever see her as more than the woman who replaced Diana. William paused, choosing each word carefully. This was never about replacing her. It was about preserving her. Then Camilla delivered the revelation she had held back. Charles had privately supported exploring a broader meaning of family descendants, believing that limited inclusion might heal the household. William's expression changed. If the sovereign's office, the staff and authority acting in the king's name, attempted to influence the trustees, he warned, every restriction would be registered with an independent legal guardian beyond palace control. Camilla left believing William had engineered the outcome. He had not. The confrontation exposes the family wound, yet the final authority belongs to trustees, whose obligation is not to royal harmony, but to the wishes of a woman who is no longer there to defend them herself. Kings can appoint officials, command ceremonies, and shape the public face of the monarchy. But inside Diana's protected estate, Charles possesses no crown, no special vote, and no power to rewrite the past. The trustees were chosen precisely because they could resist royal pressure. Their task was brutally simple: preserve the fortune for the people named within it, even if doing so humiliated a queen, divided two princes, or forced the sovereign to hear that his own household stood outside the boundary. The board's authority came from Diana's beneficiary instructions, the legal directions naming who could receive the estate and under what conditions. That meant neither the reigning monarch nor any palace office could overrule them. The protected fortune reached far beyond cash. It included private investments, royalty income, personal jewelry, correspondence rights, memorial proceeds, and funds reserved for her sons and their descendants. Sir Jonathan Hale understood the cost of enforcing that line. Before the decisive meeting, the lead trustee sat alone and repeated the promise he had once made to Diana's family. Her estate would never become a bargaining tool. He knew Charles would not threaten him. The king's pressure would come through sorrow, restraint, and the unbearable hope that one small exception might repair decades of damage. Charles asked for exactly that. He proposed a limited educational provision for Camilla's grandchildren, separate from the principal inheritance and presented as an act of reconciliation. The monarch argued that no jewelry would move, no letters would change hands, and no named beneficiary would lose a penny. For a moment, the request sounded humane. Hale closed the folder. He told Charles that compassion could not be financed by violating the trust of the woman whose wealth created the fund. A private charity could be built elsewhere, but Diana's estate could not be turned into the instrument of a blended family she had never chosen. Then the board revealed the clause that ended the argument. Diana's protections had been written to survive remarriage, specifically blocking any future spouse, stepfamily, or royal household from gaining influence. If pressure continued, the trustees could transfer administration beyond the royal orbit and place the assets under permanent external supervision. The refusal left him facing a brutal truth. He could protect his present marriage with his own fortune, but he could not purchase peace with Diana's legacy ever again. Charles left knowing the crown had given him no advantage. He had lost the legal case, and Camilla was about to make the emotional cost visible. Once Camilla's empty chair is noticed at the next major engagement, the inheritance battle escapes the trustees' room and begins reshaping the monarchy in public. The palace tried to keep the trustees' decision private. Then Camilla failed to appear at a ceremony she had helped plan for months. Her place remained set beside Charles. Her name remained printed in the program. Yet as the doors opened and the king entered alone, Every senior courtier understood that the empty chair had become more powerful than any statement. Camilla was no longer merely angry. She was withdrawing her presence and forcing the monarchy to display the wound. Camilla cancelled her attendance at the Windsor Family Foundation ceremony less than 2 hours before it began. A family foundation was a charitable body created to support causes connected to the royal household. And this event mattered because she had helped shape its message for months. She cited no illness. She offered no replacement explanation. That silence immediately linked her absence to the trustees' ruling. Senior aides feared something larger. The King's household and the Prince of Wales's office had already been strained by the inheritance dispute, and now the fracture threatened to become operational. Staff who once waited for Camilla's approval began contacting William's team directly, worried that another sudden withdrawal could disrupt future engagements. Charles entered alone. An equerry, a royal aide responsible for formal duties, quietly reached for Camilla's place card. The monarch watched him, then ordered that the chair remain. Removing it would have hidden the absence. Leaving it exposed the truth, but he could not bring himself to erase her place completely. At Clarence House, Camilla sat with the unopened program on her lap. Anger still burned, yet another feeling had begun to surface. Her protest had not punished the trustees. It had isolated Charles. She had wanted the palace to feel her exclusion, but the person carrying the humiliation was now her husband. Catherine stepped forward and delivered the remarks Camilla had prepared. The princess spoke with restraint, refusing to claim the moment as a victory. Even so, the transfer was impossible to ignore. William's wife now occupied the emotional center of an event the Queen had been expected to lead. After the ceremony, Charles removed his glasses in a private corridor and faced William. "Your mother's wishes have been protected. My marriage may not survive the way it was protected." The words stripped the victory of triumph. William finally understood that a legal boundary had created a personal disaster. He had won certainty for Diana's descendants, but he could no longer ignore the suffering spreading through his father's home and his own divided family. For the first time since the dispute began, William stops defending a document and prepares to speak directly to the woman wounded by it. William could have allowed the trustees' ruling to stand as the final word. Instead, he went to Camilla alone. No private secretary announced him. No legal folder entered the room. No king sat between them asking for peace. What followed was not an apology for protecting Diana's fortune, nor a concession to Camilla's family. It was something far more difficult. An honest conversation about inheritance, resentment, and the emotional punishment carried by people who did not create the original betrayal. William arrived at Clarence House late in the evening and asked that neither Charles nor Catherine be told until the conversation was over. Clarence House was the royal residence shared by the king and queen, but that night it became neutral ground. He had not come to reopen the legal argument. The named beneficiaries would remain unchanged. His purpose was narrower and harder: to stop the ruling from becoming a permanent declaration that Camilla's children were unwelcome. Camilla lowered her guard slowly. She admitted that storming out had never been only about money. The words "never been intended" had cut deeper than the trustees understood. After years of duty, criticism, and public restraint, she heard them as proof that her family could serve the monarchy without ever belonging to it. Tom and Laura, she said, were being judged for a history they had not created. William did not dismiss the wound. He told her that her children should not carry blame for choices made before they had any voice. Yet Diana's estate could not be used to repair those consequences. The inheritance was private protection, not a tool for reconciliation, and turning it into one would betray the very reason it existed. Camilla opened a drawer and removed the abandoned ceremony program. Inside was the speech she had prepared about children inheriting burdens they never chose. She showed it to William without defending herself. The words changed the tone between them, because both understood the same truth from opposite sides. William then offered a separate path. Charles could establish a personal family foundation from his own private resources for Camilla's descendants, entirely outside Diana's fortune and the assets tied to royal succession. A family foundation meant a privately funded body, created to support future generations without altering inheritance rights. After a long silence, Camilla agreed. She would never again seek inclusion through Diana's estate. In return, she asked William to stop the public from portraying Tom and Laura as predators or opportunists. Their private agreement brought restraint, not affection. By morning, the palace has found a private boundary both sides can accept, but the newspapers are about to give the story a far harsher verdict. The story breaks before breakfast. Within minutes, Diana's fortune is no longer a private inheritance matter but a national referendum on memory, loyalty, and belonging. To some, the ruling proves that her sons finally defended the last territory the palace could never reclaim. To others, Camilla has been publicly reminded that acceptance has limits. Yet one newspaper image captures the entire crisis: an empty royal chair beside Charles, under a headline declaring that Diana's boundary had survived them all. Broadcasters seize on the trustee confirmation as an unprecedented collision between the king's current family and the protected legacy of his first wife. A trustee confirmation is the formal statement that those controlling an estate have reaffirmed its legal instructions, and this one matters because it leaves no room for royal reinterpretation. Every discussion turns toward the same question: can the monarchy honor Diana without humiliating Camilla? The Palace Communications Office responds with a restrained statement. It confirms that Diana's estate remains governed by private beneficiary instructions, and that no royal household may alter them. The words are careful, but their meaning is brutal. The crown will not challenge the ruling, and the Queen's family will receive nothing from the protected fortune. Then the Morning Chronicle publishes the image that defines the day. Charles sits beside Camilla's empty chair beneath the headline, "Diana's final line. Trustees tell Queen her family has no claim." By midday, people gather outside Kensington Palace, where Diana once lived, placing white roses near the gates. One handwritten card reads, "A mother protected her children to the end." Camilla watches a broadcaster describe her departure as a royal rejection. She switches off the television and tells Charles that Tom and Laura must not carry her humiliation. The king hears the fear beneath her anger. She can accept the boundary, but she will not accept her children being turned into symbols of greed. William moves quickly. He orders his office not to celebrate the ruling and rejects any language portraying Camilla's family as opportunists. His message is clear: Diana's wishes have been defended, but no one will weaponize them against people who were never named in the dispute. The palace then announces a joint appearance. Charles, Camilla, William, and Catherine will attend the next Family Foundation event together, presenting unity without reversing a single inheritance protection. The decision is risky because silence can hide division, while public closeness must survive scrutiny. One awkward gesture could heal the breach or expose it beyond repair forever. When the four royals finally enter the same room, the inheritance is already settled. What remains is the emotional verdict each of them must choose to live with. The final moment does not come inside a courtroom, a trustee's office, or a palace argument. It arrives at a family charity gathering, when Camilla enters beside Charles and finds William waiting near the front row. Diana's fortune remains untouched. Her descendants remain its only beneficiaries. Nothing in the ruling has changed. Yet as the Queen approaches, the prince steps forward, not to surrender the boundary, but to show that protecting his mother no longer requires publicly punishing his father's wife. William knows what has been settled. The trustees have registered the reaffirmed protections, meaning the inheritance cannot be changed by private pressure. Diana's fortune, assets, and income belong only to William, Harry, and their direct descendants. The ruling protects more than wealth. It protects her authority. Charles has made his decision. Using private funds, the king establishes a private foundation for Camilla's children and grandchildren, giving them security without touching Diana's money, name, or legacy. A foundation is a legal fund for named beneficiaries. This separation lets the monarch care for his present family without rewriting his past. Camilla slows as William reaches for her hand. He greets her first, holds it briefly, then guides her toward the seat beside Charles. Catherine watches the tension leave the king's face. It marks the queen consort's acceptance that belonging now creates no claim over the inheritance of the woman who came before her. William feels the burden shift. The prince recognizes that defending his mother's wishes does not require endless hostility toward those never named within them. Charles sees the truth too. He cannot merge his life into one story. Some legacies must remain separate so people can coexist. Diana's greatest protection was not the amount she left behind. It was the clarity with which she decided who could control it. That clarity survived remarriage, royal pressure, resentment, and public spectacle. Camilla's storming departure exposed the limit of her acceptance, but her return proves she can remain queen without inheriting everything within the title. William preserves the boundary without turning it into a weapon. Charles protects his present without erasing his past. As the engagement ends, Camilla and William leave through the same doorway while Charles follows behind. No fortunes have been combined. No history has been erased. Diana's wishes stand exactly as intended, and the monarchy moves forward by accepting that unity does not mean ownership. Diana's fortune remained with her children, Camilla's family received protection of its own, and the crown survived by accepting one final truth. Peace became possible only when everyone stopped trying to inherit the same past. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.